In 1951, I had just turned 3 and was sent to Lilliput and Gulliver, a sleepaway camp. What? How was that even possible? I guess when you have an icy mother who never interacted with you or hugged you or kissed you or, well, anything's possible. A mother who had no interest in taking care of you. At least my 8-year-old sister would be going to the same camp, and it was for 8 weeks. Somehow, when my mother, Shirley, told the camp, "You have to take my youngest daughter. She is so close to her older sister, and they cannot be separated, I promise you. Marsha won't be any trouble." They finally acquiesced, even after explaining, "We don't take children under 6. My mother turned manipulation into an art form. Oh, but yes, I survived this camp experience despite wearing a cloak of unhappiness. Thank goodness I was cute, likable, and the counselors at camp were nice to me. I don't remember much of my early years, although I remember being very unhappy. There was no love in our house. We lived in an oversized Riverside Drive apartment in New York City. Our apartment had a huge entryway with 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, plus a maid's room with a bath off the large kitchen, a living room, a dining room. By today's standards, this was a mansion. And we had full-time sleep-in help, which explains why my mother did not have to have any interaction with me. I understand later that my mother was incapable of being a loving mother. In 1952, our family moved to Scarsdale. I was 4 years old. My father, Milton, was a World War II veteran and was given a VA loan, enabling the family to own their own property. My father rarely talked about the war. My mother said he was on the front line at the invasion of Normandy and saw a lot of men die. Oh, and there was one sentence he would always repeat. Whenever anyone would ask me what my profession was, I would tell them I was a murderer. I found out from my uncle that after the war, my father was asked to watch the brothels in Paris. No wonder, because my father was very good looking, and people commented that he looked like a movie star. My father was aloof, paid no attention to me. But surprisingly, one activity that he shared with me was playing softball in the backyard of our home. Apparently, he didn't care that I was a girl. He also taught me how to play golf. When I was 13, I was an assistant golf counselor at camp. Anyway, our house in Scarsdale was a large split level and was painted pink and gray, certainly different from the other houses in the neighborhood, which were usually white with blue or gray or black shutters. It was a peaceful block, Haverfoot Avenue, and across the street was the Marx estate, founder of Marx Toys. That Georgian mansion had 25 rooms sitting on 20 acres. They had horses, and my friends and I would have a good time watching them through the fence. We had a backyard with a weeping willow tree, magnolia tree, rose garden, flowers planted and tended to by our gardener. Interestingly, Mom found that cutting tulips, peonies, and lilacs and putting them in vases was a lot easier than tending to me. The good thing was that I was able to bring my teachers beautiful flowers. I must admit that as an adult, I now love flowers and making flower arrangements. Well, once we moved to Scarsdale, I began my journey of becoming independent. When I shared a room with my sister, I remember putting a line on the floor and telling her, "You cannot cross this line. If you do, I won't be nice to you. This is my half." And from the moment I attended kindergarten at the Little Red Schoolhouse, I started to find any reason to be away from our house. Can you imagine a mother saying, "You have to make your bed perfectly, and you can never sit on it, and no playing in your room"? I never felt the room was mine anyway. Mom decorated it without my input with dark yellow carpeting and wallpaper with yellow roses. The two twin beds had sage green quilted bedspreads with pillows, dust ruffle that matched the wallpaper. She never once asked me what I wanted. Thank goodness I didn't have any play dates in our house, although on the few occasions when friends came over, we did get to play. Played Clue, Stop and Shop, and played with my large collection of paper dolls down in the damp, cold basement. Ugh, we had no choice. That was the only option if we wanted to play indoors. But even with my life mainly outside of the house, I was miserable. I kept hitting a wall when trying to get emotional support from my parents. You'd think they would want to see their daughter playing Mrs. Darling and Peter Pan in the school play, but that never happened. Mother also opted out of being a Girl Scout or class mother, but then why did she turn around and do this for my sister? Did she ever think to herself, well, Marsha is so independent, she doesn't need my help? Then finally, a major realization occurred. I noticed that when I came home from school, my mother was still in bed. And get this, she expected me to take care of her, bring her tea. Why couldn't she do those things for herself? Well, I soon found out. During my scavenger hunt for toiletries in the bathroom that she had demanded I find for her, I looked in the medicine cabinet and wow, so many pills. I was curious. I wrote a few of them down. I tried to imagine that this was some connection to her being bedridden. So I asked my friend, whose father was a doctor, to get me a physician desk reference. I couldn't believe it. My mother's drug collection included Dexedrine, Seconal, and Tuinal. Was she a drug addict? This was further evidence that I needed to separate myself from her. And so I was going to cope by going on weekly sleepovers to my friend, Carol. But every once in a while, I would forget that my parents were absent to me, and I would pointlessly seek their approval. My father never got home before 7:30 each night, and at that late hour, we had a formal dinner with each course served by our housekeeper. And my parents followed that crazy cliche, children should be seen and not heard. They conversed about their day, and my sister and I were asked to be quiet and forget about any kind of affection. Talk about a controlling environment. Felt like I was in prison. Oh, couldn't wait till I grew up and I could escape. I managed to succeed academically without any input from my parents and foolishly expected accolades. I was in advanced classes in seventh and eighth grade and won second place in the Westchester County Science Fair. Then I became an insomniac and found that music was the only thing that made my nights tolerable. I would often listen to the radio till midnight. In school, we had to take an instrument in seventh grade. I decided to play the alto saxophone as I wanted to sit with the boys. Amazingly, I became the number one saxophone player in my school band. Again, seeking praise from my parents, but coming up empty-handed. I missed out on all the pleasures of my youth as my mother was controlling and cold, and my father joined her program. They never took me to museums, movies, or theater. Our family did not take family vacations. My friends did. My parents, however, traveled a great deal. They took many trips, which included going to Cuba, Russia, and a cruise around the world. I did have something that made me happy when I went to Quaker Ridge School, which went from first to eighth grade. We had a basketball team and played other schools in Scarsdale. Would you believe that from sixth to eighth grade, we never lost a game? After each game, the team would go out to lunch. Our basketball team bonded, and we still speak today. And in 1962, when I went to Scarsdale High School, my sadness and insecurity took a break. The first week of school, the star player on the football team asked me out. But I was carrying so much baggage that after a few dates, I ended the relationship. My parents had corrupted me, making me incapable of any kind of intimacy. And you'll never guess what happened next. They wanted to send me off to Europe to complete my junior and senior years. My mother actually told me, now that you're an adult, we are no longer responsible for you. You'll need to fend for yourself. At this point, Dad was following Mother's wishes. No surprise that when I was decluttering my past and I found a photo of my father, I was repulsed. I wrote on the back of the photo, I hate you. See, I was terrified of going to Europe on my own. None of my friends' parents had decided on this type of education for their children. It was only after a constant barrage of hysterical crying that my parents finally abandoned this insane idea of going to Europe. When it was time to apply to colleges, I wanted to go to a city university with a diverse population and not on the East Coast, perhaps Tulane or UCLA. But my parents, however, said I could only apply to a college within 200 miles of New York City. All of a sudden, they wanted me to be close so they could visit me. This would turn out to be another lie. They never came. They wouldn't even take me to colleges to check them out. I relied on a friend to drive me to colleges that I wanted to visit. Although I excelled academically, I kept getting rejection letters from the colleges I had applied to. I became frantic. Well, where was I going to go? I asked for help from my history teacher, and my guidance counselor said she could no longer help me. The counselor told me that I was getting rejected because my grades were too good. They were under the impression that I wouldn't accept their offers. This made no sense, and it convinced me. I think I was cursed. I did finally get accepted to Boston University, which was one of the colleges that had originally rejected me because they didn't think I would accept. The drama continued to magnify itself. Sure, I got good grades, but had lots of diverse friends. I started casually dating Howard. I knew he wasn't marriage material, but he helped my self-esteem. He was the life of the party. Certainly not the type of guy for a long-term relationship. He was an opportunist, and I was from a good family. But I was still miserable until an opportunity came where I could go to Europe in my sophomore year at Boston with one of my professors and six friends for 10 weeks. Wow! I was really ready this time. And amazingly, my father said, yes. And it actually turned out to be a stupendous trip. We went to amazing museums and an opera and Van Gogh's house and the Danish gardens and even to salt mines, just to name a few places. We loved Versailles. And we took a picture of me sitting on Marie Antoinette's bed. We also bought English style mini dresses and took pictures on the famous Carnaby Street. But all of this goodwill was undone when my sister notified me when I was in England that our parents invited Howard to our house. If it offered Howard a job working for him if he married you. How could my parents reach such new heights of being manipulative? As soon as I arrived home, my father informed me, you have to marry Howard, or else you can't go back to Boston University. You'll have to transfer to NYU and live at home. I was devastated. There was no way I could ever live with my parents again. And they had moved into an apartment without a bedroom for me because they had turned a second bedroom into a den. The only thing I could think of doing was to have the tour guide who I connected with on my trip to Europe come to my parents' apartment and take me out on a date. We actually both wanted to pursue the relationship when we got back to the States. I said to my dad in a loud, piercing voice, sitting on the couch in the den, don't you get it? I don't want to get married, and I want to go back to be you. My desperate cries were of no use. On a side note, my father did a Dun and Bradstreet report on Howard's father. He sat me down and told me that my future father-in-law had gotten convicted of fixing dog races by giving the dogs injections. I was even guilty of administering abortions. My reply was, and you still want me to get married? But the path was set. I had to get married. Once this was decided, my mother told me that she did not want to pay for a wedding for me, even though she gave my sister an elaborate one, and that I should elope. She even showed me where her wedding band was for me to take, but then she concocted a plan. I would get married privately in their apartment before we went to our engagement party. The party had been arranged by my future father-in-law. Once we arrived at that party, we would announce that we were already married. I wish I could tell you that I never went through with this, but uh, it all happened on a snowy night. My sister and her husband got stuck in the snow, and the rabbi was late. Even with these mishaps, my parents won. I got married. No elegant white dress for me. And then things got worse. In what was supposed to be the honeymoon suite for Howard and me, my mother did not like the room she was given at the same hotel and insisted that she stay in our suite. Bad enough, right? But the pinnacle of horrendousness came when I received my wedding gift from her. It was her pink, frilly bathrobe. I was mortified, so unhappy. But you don't want to hear a sob story, do you? You probably think, well, it was bad, but it wasn't so bad. Believe me, this was just the beginning of my crazy life. I have stories enough to fill a library, but somehow got through it and lived to tell the tale. Trust me, I wouldn't wish that life on anyone. I almost died when I was giving birth to my son, Ian.
Luba, I stopped it because you probably need something to drink.
Yes, I do. I only read it at one time. I forget how long it is. Where do you want me to start?
Oh, What was the last line?
You want to, when you want to do the end of the paragraph, mortified and so unhappy,
Is
but
that the last?
you don't want to hear my sob story, do you? You probably
No,
think,
you've already said that.
I know, believe me, I'm just reading it again. This was just the beginning of my crazy life. I have enough to tell a library, but somehow I got through it and lived to tell the tale. Trust me, I wouldn't wish this life on anyone.
Okay, maybe
Oh,
it's there.
I
I
almost
think.
died. No, I did some more. I almost died when I was giving birth to my son, Ian. I think that's where I stopped.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to start it now.
My vitals and the baby's vitals dropped to an emergency level, and I was rushed to emergency surgery. I felt I was in a TV series as they rushed me down the hall to the operating room. I was given anesthesia, but I was awake. The doctor slashed me open, and out came an 8 pound, 11 ounce baby boy. Considering that I was 5'2" and 107 pounds, this was quite a feat. I was totally isolated at the time. My husband was working out of town. My parents did not even come to see me until Ian was 3 months old. It was really horrible that my parents did not come to see the birth of their grandchild. My father, he died of hepatitis. He was admitted to the hospital and was diagnosed with hepatitis from eating raw fish. Yeah, he loved oysters. He died the next day. How crazy. My marriage became a house of horrors. I was living in Aspen with a husband who was not paying attention to me. We lived in a ski lodge with my 6 month old son and no refrigerator or stove. Turns out that my husband was cheating on me. I confronted him, told him that Ian and I were leaving and he could care less. We went by plane to New York, taking my son's crib with us because I wanted him to feel comfortable. I stayed with my mother in her apartment on Manhattan's East Side. After I was there for 6 months, she announced that she was selling the apartment and moving her home to Florida. There I was with my infant child, no place to live. My aunt, my father's sister, offered to let me stay with her temporarily, but I was fortunate and was so grateful that my friend Linda offered to let me stay with her and her family in their small 2 bedroom apartment. Ian slept in the same room as their son, who was the same age as Ian, and I slept on the couch. Still, Linda and I had a great time with the kids making tie-dye t-shirts and pajamas. And I needed to find my own place, and I had no money. So, resourceful me, Ian and I went on welfare. Can you imagine a girl from Scarsdale applying for welfare? I felt so small, degraded, but I had no choice. Amazingly, I was able to fill out the paperwork and get food stamps. And get this, I received an allotment for housing. I wouldn't quite call this a happy ending, but at least I was independent. Little did I know what would happen later. My mother, as I mentioned, was living in Florida, and it turned out that she overdosed twice. She refused to go for help, and it finally happened that she fell asleep in bed with a cigarette and suffered fourth-degree burns. She had to be medevac to a larger hospital, and it was there that she died. I hate to say this, but I was actually relieved. I hoped that by eliminating this toxic parent, it would improve my life. My mother's condominium burned to the ground. A beloved oil painting of me when I was 3 years old and had to sit for the artist for 2 hours was lost. I was devastated. I was 32 years old. How can I skip what happened to my 9.5-year-old son? I was working at Gianfranco Ruffini, an Italian designer, developing a boys' activewear line. And I had a strange feeling that something had happened. It was snowing very hard, and I told the office I had to go home. When I got home, Ian's friend and our housekeeper, who came every day to watch Ian after school till I got home from work, they were there, but there was no Ian. I told Ian's friend and my housekeeper, go home. I called a lawyer friend and told him something must have happened to Ian, and could he call the police to check. He could not find any information, but came to stay with me. Shortly after, there was a loud pounding at my door. It was the police, and they came to report that Ian had been hit by a truck and died. I broke down. I was numb. I don't remember much after that. Ian's death was reported in all the nightly news shows as it was the first tragic death in a record-breaking 16-inch snowfall. This was February 11th, 1983. I received over 500 letters from friends, people I had worked with, Ian's schoolmates, mothers, and people I'd never met. This helped to heal my wrenched gut. I quote one letter. I was present just after your son's tragic accident. Everybody protected his body by forming a circle around him. Many took off their jackets to cover him. There was a sacredness in the gathering, a protective silence only broken by tears. Ian's face was peaceful, and there was no sign of pain. I had to let you know that there was a circle of love around your son. He was not alone. Also, a poem which evoked great emotion was written by a young friend of Ian's and was published in our local newspaper. I wish I could be in a boxing match with the driver who killed my friend, Ian. I wish I could hit him until he falls down. I wish he would be punished for taking away my friend, Ian. After processing all that transpired, finding out that the police would not press charges, I decided to become politically active and pursue ways to stop red light runners and changing the minimum fine for offenders. The fine was $25 for running a red light. I spoke in front of the New York legislature. There were articles about my story in the New York Times and the Post. The Post article titled Stopping Red Light Jumpers ended by saying, perhaps red light jumpers should be forced to meet mothers like Marsha Gilbert of Manhattan, whose 9-year-old son was struck down by a speeding truck and has dedicated herself to a crusade against offenders. To this day, I often think of the tragic day of February 11th. I let myself feel the loss of my son over and over, although, thank goodness, I feel I have processed the event as best I can. On a side note, I worked very hard to support Ian and myself. I became successful in the men's apparel business. I was vice president at Cacharel Men's, Yves Saint Laurent, jeans, Speedo, men's swimwear, tees, and Ruffini. I followed up my fashion days working at Baruch College, CUNY, at Baruch. I walked, wait a minute. I worked with disabled students and veterans, helping them get internships and jobs. You know, I wanted to tell my story for many years. It's so bizarre. And I feel that there is a message there, but I would only write this if there was a happy ending. I deserve that, didn't I? So I can now announce that there is a happy ending. Finally, being with my soulmate. Maybe it was worth going through all of that hell. Otherwise, I might never have met Paul, my one and only.